right, we'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary Ann, will you call the roll?
Here.
Here.
Jacobs,
Here.
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 First item is recognitions.
We do not have any recognitions tonight. Is that correct, Dr. Freitas?
That's correct.
Okay. Report, Student Association report, my favorite.
Some new faces.
Yes. You guys can pull some chairs up if you want to sit, right?
Oh, we can stand.
You want to stand? Okay, speak nice and loud then.
Yeah, hi, I'm Taylor Jurgens. I'm the Student Association President of Exec Board, and
I'm Catherine. I am the Director of Communications on the Exec Board.
I'm Omar, and I'm the student spokesperson on the board.
And we just wanted to come and give you a report on some of the things that we've been doing this year. Omar's going to start off talking about the freshman rotation that happened at the beginning of the year.
So as you know, we did the freshman rotation the day before school started, and I felt that this was a lot better because this way, the freshmen felt more comfortable with the first day because it's so much to take in, and then especially the freshmen were able to get a bigger look around the school and figure things out. So I feel like it was a lot easier for them. And then we had also 2 weeks ago we delivered a poster to Vince Voncoletti because he was terminally ill. And so we made a poster, we took it to the cafeteria, got everyone's signatures, and then about 2 weeks ago we delivered it to his house, and that was just a nice thing we did for, remember, our community and our Bulldogs. So.
Are the mics picking you up? I want to make sure people at home can hear what you guys are saying. I think you've got some. Okay.
Awesome.
Sorry,
Yeah.
thank you.
And another thing about freshman orientation, we had a really big turnout because usually Student Association and NHS are the ones that help out, and we had over 50 people helping out, which was really nice to have to help out with those groups, especially because we had a bigger class this year. Another thing we want to talk about is the really positive atmosphere we've had, especially this year. We've had a lot of school spirit. We had our first homecoming game. Not last Friday, but the Friday before, and it was really fun.
Home football game.
Yes, home football game, sorry.
Homecoming's next Friday.
Oh, yes.
I
And we had a theme for it, which was whiteout, and it was really cool to see everyone there because we had a huge student section, and we got a new banner too. That was really nice to have RBHS Dog Pound, which is really cool to show where the student section is. Also, we've had Spirit Fridays, which is what we've been doing for a couple of years now, but we've had a really big, significant increase in participation this year. For those of you who don't know what Spirit Fridays are, we do it usually once a month, sometimes twice, depends, and we'll do a theme. So this month we did the first home football game, which was whiteout, so we just matched it with the theme. So during the day we said, you can wear all white, or the other option is just blue and white, which is always just a general option if you don't have that theme. And we had a really big for the last 2 months that we've done, a lot of teachers have been participating, and a lot of students have, and we had the recent one we had a three-way tie with 100%, which was really fun.
Really?
Yeah, but it just shows how everyone's getting really involved this year, and a lot of clubs and activities are doing a lot this year, which is nice. And then another thing we're doing is homecoming, but yes, it's very soon, so we've been doing a lot, but Catherine will tell you about that.
So homecoming is next Saturday, October 5th. Our theme is RB Takes on Hollywood, and Student Association has been working really hard. Thursdays and Saturday mornings we have murals. Thursdays are from say 7:30 to 8:40, and then we come on Saturday mornings from 8:30 to 12:30 because we have a lot more murals this year than we normally have, trying to just really up our decorations. And during the week we're going to have spirit days, and also during all the lunches we do a penny pinch. And each year we select a fundraiser that's more local to have a more positive impact on our community. And this year we chose a foundation which is helping a freshman right now at RB. It's the Baby Skinner Foundation. I think that's not 100% yet, but I think that's what we're going to go with. But there's a student, a freshman here at RB who some of you may know. Her name is Lizzie Mooney, and I think she has, is that right? Anyways, she is homeschooled. She cannot go to school. Someday she can barely move. So this has really impacted her, but this foundation is working with her and her family and helping them out as much as they can. So I think that's, oh yeah, and then this Friday, or this upcoming Friday, not this, the next one, is the pep rally. And we have games there. We'll have our students versus faculty, dodgeball tournament, and yeah, a lot of fun stuff in school spirit.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got a couple questions now, man. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I don't want to make sure, so if you have to answer. Is essay, or who's doing this, are we doing door decorating in local businesses, or did that go through, or I know we were looking at that?
That was developing boss, and I could report as soon as I can.
Okay, all right, I'm not stealing his thunder. All right, what happened today at lunch that I walked in, John Denver, Country Roads, West Virginia, that song was playing and the entire cafeteria was singing.
I unfortunately missed that. I was in A-lunch, so I didn't get to be in that.
Who had
I saw
seen
a lot of
I was
Snapchats and
there.
stories about that, and I was very disappointed.
So what
missing that.
happened?
I think you might have lucked out, let's be honest.
I honestly think school music just started playing. Everyone got really into it. And we know one of us really got into it. Started doing all the dances.
Who was
Country
dancing?
Roads is a very big song here. Everyone loves it. So,
I mean, I literally saw like 300 kids walking out of the cafeteria in unison singing.
There we go.
Country Roads.
yeah.
It's classic.
That's awesome. It is.
I think going off of that, I mean, and like what we had coming up with the pep rally and coming up with like the home football game, I think like this year we've had like a really good turnout with school spirit and like getting people to participate, and people have been really, really on it this year. And I feel like there's been a lot more like activities going on. People are really looking forward to it.
Well, that's good news, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to report to the board?
Not yet. Just be ready for our next report. We have a lot of
It'll be in October, so we'll look
Yeah.
forward. Does the board have any
Thank you.
questions for the students?
I like the statement. We thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
And for getting everybody, pumped up and all the work and effort that you do. It's not an easy thing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Have a good homecoming.
Safe homecoming.
The next item is the president's report.
Do you have anything?
I
today?
do not have anything today.
All right.
I bet you were a little nervous, but I don't.
I did, I was just making sure.
Hold your breath. Superintendent's report, that's you. You're up next.
Curriculum Advisory Council, no update. We previously met back in, I want to say, May.
Yes.
And
Long time
tonight,
ago.
Kylie will be discussing the first read of some course title changes and course proposals and fee changes and some objects like that. Facilities Advisory Council is scheduled for October, and that is Tom Jacobs and Wes Smithing will be finalizing the walkthrough on the closeout of the pool project, and we'll be discussing, we have 3 sections of roof that need to be completed next summer, the summer of 20. So we'll be discussing and doing some preliminary bid discussions as we prepare the bid to go out.
Are we going to do that in the next fiscal year?
Yes, that's the summer 20. No, it'll be
So it'll
taken
be
out
FY20 or FY21?
FY20, because it will start in June.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it's out of our life safety funds, which we already have in our
Gotcha.
life safety fund.
Gotcha.
Finance Advisory Council, no update. Personnel, or I should say with the Finance Advisory Council, Kristen is working with the administrator, our accountant to finish the audit, and she'll have that report later this fall. Personnel Advisory, no update, and Policy Advisory Council, no update. Purchase or lease of Land Advisory Council, I have a meeting scheduled for October to sit down with the zoo and to discuss a few items. I will update the board accordingly at the October count. And those are my superintendent updates.
Principal's report?
Good evening,
Dr.
honorable
Freitas?
board members. Here's my principal's report and updates. This is how RB has been winning the week. At the beginning of the month, we celebrated Suicide Prevention Week. Students left knowing that they have adults they can talk to and that they're supportive and that we have tools in place for them to share any other concerns. We've been acknowledging student activities and parent organization in games. At our first home game, we brought for our theater program, and we also acknowledged the parents. Here at RB, my vision is to build bridges amongst all groups. We're actually hosting right now a college session tips for seniors at this moment, so we're engaging our seniors. We started our blended learning pilot. We've invited the class of 69 to tour. I spent about an hour and a half with them, and they were pleased with the growth of RB. They were pleased to see all their friends, all the all-state friends that they have. Here at RB, we value tradition, and we're excited for the future. I have begun hosting the Principals Forum, which is a monthly opportunity for students to talk with me about issues that are affecting our school culture and climate. I'm also warmly extending an invitation to other parents. Starting in the month of October, I will have my coffee with the principal, where parents have an opportunity to speak with me and collaborate on projects. My first meeting will be Monday, October 7th from 9 to 10. My next meeting will be Tuesday, November 21st from 9 to 10. And my third meeting will be Monday, December 16th from 9 to 10. This information could also be found at our website. On October 5th, we will have our homecoming dance from 7 to 10. We will have an entire production, a stage, a master of ceremonies, competitions, dancing. It's gonna be, what I sure hope, one of the best homecomings ever. And last but not least, Parent-Teacher Conference are upon us next month, Thursday, October 24th from 12 to 8. We ask our parents to please print the report cards via Skyward so you have the tool in place to speak with the parents, to speak with the teachers. And that is my principal's report.
Okay, does the board have any questions for Dr. Freitas?
A quick question on the principals forum. What kind of turnout are you getting?
So I'm getting between maybe 10 and 15 students. We've had 2 meetings thus far.
Okay, same students, different students?
I will say a mix of students.
Okay, good.
The blended learning pilot, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So in the blended learning pilot, it's an experience where students work in a digital platform and they also work outside of the classroom. You know, they own the content. So the teacher, for example, a flipped classroom, the teacher will assign a PowerPoint for students to view. And in the classroom, students discuss it through Socratic seminar. So students dig deep by complementing what they learn online with the communicative activity in the classroom. Students will also have the flexibility to work in the library, to work in the atrium, to work independently. Many of us have learned in a blended learning environment. If you work online, if you work through Blackboard, you know, that's how many programs in universities, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral levels are heading towards. If you do virtual learning, that's also part of the blended learning experience.
So are there teachers across all 4 grade levels and across all the subject areas?
Yes, we have all 4 grade levels and about 9 subjects currently.
Nice. Thank
Kylie
you.
could probably speak a little bit more to that. Kylie, when she gives her report, she did some work on that last year. We took a couple groups to Huntley for a site observation and put together some of the preliminary work that had to be done last spring and this summer. So if you could just make a little note, Kylie, to touch on anything else we didn't cover.
Thank you, Dr. Freitas.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, Assistant Superintendent's report.
Good evening. I'd like to begin by providing the financial reports for August, which represent 16.7% of the fiscal year. On page 6 is our monthly summary report. As you can see, the total revenue for the month was a little over $7 million, with 93% of that coming from real estate taxes and 3% coming from evidence-based funding. The total expenditures for the month were a little over $2 million, with 75% towards salary and benefits, and 10% towards building level supplies, and 6% towards special education tuition. If you go to page 7 of Board Book, this begins the monthly financial statements, and the summary of revenue shows that the district has received 39% of our revenue for the year, and this amount is very similar to last fiscal year where we received 41% because of the big income from real estate taxes. The summary of expenditures shows that the district has spent 21% of the budgeted expenditures for the year. This amount is also similar to last year, which was 18%. The 3% difference can be accounted for through the pool HVAC project. We have a significant increase in expenditures due to that. On page 10, the Statement of Revenue and Expenditures report, it begins for the month of August. This is it's the same report, but slightly different format under our new software system. And so what we have done, we don't really get this report until it goes right into the board book. And so what we did after is look at all of the accounts that were over 100% already and started to see if things were coded incorrectly in the transition and then correcting those. So anything that's over 100% for the most part will be corrected by the next board meeting. On page 21 is a student activity account. Just a reminder that the negative account balances represent positive fund balances on that report. And then tonight I have 2 additional reports, and there were a few questions on those. The first is on page 25, which is the 2018-19 Certified Staff Compensation Report. The state requires us to present this to the board annually, but the board does not need to approve it, and then it goes on our website by October 1st. There was a question about 2 teachers having retirement enhancements. This was because it's actually pulling IMRF in this report, so they're certified and classified, and those were the only 2 employees.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then on page 29 begins the transfer in enrollment report. And this is something that I've been tracking for the past couple of years. And as you can see, last year we had depending on which number you looked at, we were pretty accurate. If you look at our projection versus our in-house enrollment, we were spot on. And then when you're looking at the difference between total enrollment, we were off by a few students. And that is particularly, about the same pattern for the past 3 years. This year, unfortunately, we were a little further off. So as you can see in the far right column, we had a net gain of 17 transfer-in students after considering the students that had transferred out. Our enrollment as of September 9th was 1,668 students, and that includes our outplaced students and our transition students. And so our actual enrollment we refer to as our in-house enrollment. That doesn't include those students because they don't eat up our FTE. That's 1,614 students. And so you can see our projections were off from last year. And in trying to do some digging to figure out where we kind of missed the mark, I think one thing that's important to note, and this has been true in the 7-8 years that I've been here, is that our transfer numbers continue to decrease every year. There were times where we were in the hundreds before. And so I think that is a very consistent trend. And I think we're probably getting to a point where we're leveling off at around 60, 70 students. So I think that's one thing that had an impact. The other thing in looking at where
I'm sorry, because you're just talking about enrollment, but the schools in Brookfield, Brook Park and Rose are like exploding. They just added more classrooms.
Well, a lot of that was added, remember, at Brook Park was K through, so we won't see that influx
until they come to high
for
school.
a couple of years.
So, but that last statement was that we're kind of tapering off. I think we're maybe in a lull before another wave.
Could be. So there's a difference though. This is just transfers. So we're not talking about, I wasn't talking about enrollment as a whole tapering off. I was talking about transfers. We used to get this huge influx of transfers, and that seems to have dwindled each year. And now we're consistently around anywhere from 60 to 70 students is what it seems like.
So definition of transfer is that rising eighth. If someone was in 8th grade, but say in Crete, Illinois, are they counted as a transfer?
Yes. Because we didn't anticipate them coming, so we didn't staff for them because we didn't know they were showing up. So we count them. Feeder school. Correct. We count them as a transfer.
So is that projected number derived solely from the 8th grade testing amount, or how do you get to that projected?
So in November every year we do fall enrollment, we do enrollment projections. And so what we do is we gather the enrollment data from all of our feeders as well as the private schools in the area. And we look at their K-8 enrollment, and we take their 8th grade enrollment and we take 90% of that to come to RB. And that's where we seem to be off this year. And so I was doing some digging, and I think some of that may have been from the private schools, and maybe we need to count less of that, and I think that will help. And then we use like the 7th, 6th, 5th to come up with future numbers as well. And so you'll see we'll project 3 or 4 years out for our enrollment too.
So I guess maybe that's my follow-up, is that I'd like to see how this impacts the future enrollment trend, maybe to Laura's point about what's the impact if,
Sure.
I know it's been projected in the past over maybe a 5-year period.
So what we give you in November is
Yeah.
like a 5-year projection, when we also give you projected staffing levels at 90% of that projection. And if we went to like a 30-to-1 average, a 27-to-1 average, and a 25-to-1 average. So the impact of
That's my next question. What's
the
the
impact
impact
of
here?
us now having some fluctuation, obviously we were projecting 1673 and we're at 1614, so that is roughly about a teacher and a half.
Or it's a different class size,
Correct.
right? So, okay.
A rule of thumb for the board is usually anywhere between 25 and 30 new students equals 1 teacher. Because a student will take, at a minimum, will take 5 classes, and a teacher, as a full-time teacher, teaches 5 classes. So for every 30 new kids is like 1 FTE. It's the easy way to do it. So Kristen will have a more detailed report in November. We'll also do a staffing summary and give you an idea where we're at this year, how many support services we have between social workers, counselors, and reading interventionists, things like that. We'll lay all that out for you, and then we'll also look at the projections and see if there's what the budget impact, projected budget impact would be for the next fiscal year.
I mean, I guess I'm more curious as to what the root cause may be. I mean, it's been a very steady projection the last 3 years, and there's a sizable differential this year. So is it worthwhile to talk to the feeder schools and ask what may have transpired? Or the theory you're putting out is the private schools did not?
Like, for example, last year, I know we used, in the number for the projection, we used St. John's Lutheran in LaGrange. We don't have a single student at RB that comes from that school, but they had 17 8th graders. So that was included when the projection was made. So
Okay.
that accounts for a significant portion of that.
But have we used St. John's the year before?
I know we did the year before. I don't know prior to that because
Okay.
I haven't done the projections in the past. So I'm
Okay.
trying to go back and put the pieces together.
Well, and the irony is, I had 2 kids come from St. John's and 1 come from Timothy. So you got all my kids from a private feeder.
Well, and they may have come
Right.
at some point. That may have been a trend. That's
Right.
obviously certainly why we've included them in the past. But
Yeah.
I think that may have shifted.
Well, I appreciate the color-coded chart because I love numbers like this.
Yeah, I look forward just to hearing more about the projections for next year, thanks. I think that'll be very interesting. Thank you.
Under the, we have under the principal's report tonight, I don't see, or wait, I'm sorry. We're okay. We're good.
Okay. Visitor statements? Seeing that there are none, we'll move on. Discussion items? Anyone to my left? Deanna?
No?
Right?
Oh, yeah, I'd like to add one on the environmental event this week,
Oh, that global.
the global warming protests.
We'll address that at the end of the meeting when we get through the agenda.
Hang on, I'm writing it down so I don't forget. Old business, life safety, capital improvements.
No update, as I gave in my superintendent's report, we'll address during our facilities advisory council.
Okay, next, educational tours.
There were no additional questions submitted. I did receive one phone call about just our forms, and those administrative procedures were put together by the Policy Council a few years ago and reviewed by our legal counsel. And so there are established procedures that were reviewed and that we do follow on a regular basis and have the attorneys review on a biannual basis, I would say.
So for the board, I had made that call. In the past, we had the luxury of having a couple attorneys, as boards, but when we read those documents, they look good, but not being an attorney by practice, I would not know if something was missing. And so I was kind of curious, because there's a time when you don't know what you don't know, and that's why I called Kevin. I said, how do we know we're covered legally? How do we know we have everything? If you're not an attorney, how would you know that? That's when he said that the law firm that we use periodically goes through those forms. And that made me feel better, so that.
It's good, that's what we pay them for, right?
Right, so that when we're out and reading through the legal form, if students make poor choices, and I'm not saying they would, I went with 3 busloads to New York City and everybody was really just wonderful. But you could see that the school is not, liable, or that we're in good shape.
I think it's important to recognize that the law firm likely reviews all of our policies and forms. Yeah. I'm not sure it removes us from liability. Those are 2 distinct issues, I think. So I think it's probably a good call that the form is consistent and is under regular review, like probably many other documents that move through the Board of Ed. But I'm not sure it's a panacea to anything.
That was the comment I made to Ms. Aruska during our phone call, is that even though we have these forms, it does not mean that we still could not be sued or some type of action still couldn't be filed.
Okay. Thank you.
I did not receive any other questions on any of the educational tours.
Any further discussion?
So I guess my last question, Kevin. Every single trip, no matter how long or how short, has to fill out the same legal form?
There's different forms for each trip. If it's overnight, it has a different form and needs board approval. If it's in state and less than 200 miles and not overnight, they could do a field trip reform. So there's 2 or 3 different sets of forms that we use as our administrative procedure that the Policy Council established with the attorneys a few years ago.
Okay, so I guess, my nervousness is, on our ski trip, because that's not an overnight trip. But, the potential for injury is a little higher on that trip?
Yeah, but it's out of state, so I think it's considered an educational tour, which still needs board approval.
And so that way, if a student were to have, a mishap,
Right.
they need to be brought to the hospital or whatever.
We had one last year, and I believe the
Yeah.
students have to sign a hold harmless indemnification.
Okay.
For the entity that they're skiing in.
Right.
Can I have a motion?
All right, Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, approves the 10 educational tour requests as presented in the September 24th, 2019 Board Agenda Packet.
Second, please.
Second.
Second, Bill Durkin.
Mr. Durkin. Mary Ann, call the roll, please.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Sierra?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Ms. Salas?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Check that off my list. Next, IMRF service credit.
We had this on the agenda last week. We wanted to do one last review with Kristen and I, and Kristen updated the background sheet. Kristen, why don't you provide the board with what we updated?
We just updated the background sheet to say that we would provide some additional information in the board policy. I believe 5:270 would be the best fit. Just mentioning that we had this available.
And so if the board approves this tonight, then we will bring to the board in October the adjustment of that policy.
Discussion? Can we have a,
Straightforward.
can we have a motion then?
The Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, approves the resolution regarding service credit in the IMRF to members who served in the Armed Forces of the United States as presented in the September 24th, 2019 Board Agenda Packet.
Second.
Ms.
Second by Ms.
Salas?
Salas. This does require a roll call, Marion.
Ms. Ruska?
Yes.
Ms. Cedar?
Yes.
Ms. Towner?
Yes.
Ms. Salas?
Yes.
Mr. Durkin?
Yes.
Ms. Lindquist is up, yes?
Course fees and then I call.
Oh, course fees?
So Kylie's going to be coming up. She'll be speaking on a couple items. She'll be speaking on course fees, proposed curriculum guide changes, our e-learning plan. I would say, why don't you start with just any additional information on the blended learning?
So the blended learning pilot involves 8 courses here, 9 teachers, because one of the courses in the pilot is a co-taught class. So we have not only levels 9 through 12 represented, but we have co-taught through AP represented. We have 4 departments represented: English, Science, Math, and World Language. We're actually having our student meeting tomorrow to talk through requirements for students, what they will be doing when they're on flex days, which are days that they don't have to report to the classroom. They can report to the library or to the atrium to work independently while the teacher is in the classroom working with those students whose grades might be below the threshold to be out on flex days, some students who need additional help, any other students that might want to be in the classroom. The visits at Huntley High School were really eye-opening for us, and one of the best parts of that was we got to talk to some students who had taken blended learning classes at Huntley. And basically at Huntley High School, you can say to your counselor, I want to take English blended or not blended. I want to take science blended or not blended. You have that option because they're a fully implemented school. And one of the students talked to us and talked about being a special education student with an IEP and saying to his counselor, I want to be in blended science. And the counselor said, well, I don't know if that's the best idea for you because, there's going to be days when you don't have to report to class, but you're probably going to need the support. And the student said, that's why I'm taking it blended. On all the days when those other kids don't have to be in class, I'm going to be able to have all the attention of my teacher. I want that. So this student approached it from the standpoint of, I don't want to do blended because I want to be out of the classroom. I want to do it because I know that I'm going to need individualized support, and I know that I'll be able to get that in a different way through a blended classroom than I would through a regular classroom. So we're really excited. A lot of work has been put into this blended pilot. We had these 9 teachers spending, it's funny to say they spent 20 hours over the summer with summer curriculum time. They spent much more than that. That is what we were able to give them. And all of this is led by our amazing instructional technology coordinator, Bridget Wilmot, who has really been the backbone of this pilot, really keeping me on track with what is needed for me to be able to support the teachers, really inspiring the teachers, connecting with the woman who wrote the book Blended, which is the whole pilot is based on this book. So Bridget's got her on speed dial and she can call her and talk to her anytime. The students are first going to be eligible to be out of their classrooms on October 1st. This whole first couple months of school has been about training and how does this work and what does this look like and what are the rules and regulations and how are we going to pull this off. And the teachers are just ready to go. So tomorrow, Dave Mannon and Neil Dugetti and I will meet with students and talk through building expectations. And then October 1st, we're going to be ready to see where this pilot takes us, and we're really excited.
So what does out of the classroom look like? If they're out of the classroom, where are they? And is there a requirement about how much time to be in the classroom?
So they have two options when they are on flex days and they don't have to be in the classroom. Amy Phillips has sanctioned off a portion of the library so that they can report to the library, and they can also report to the atrium. So just when you walk in, the benches and areas that students can sit and work in the atrium. Since we are doing a pilot, all of the students have to check in with their teachers every day for attendance purposes, and then they have to go to whatever blended space they're going to go to, and they have to stay there. All of the students are identifiable by lanyards with their photo on them. The lanyards are orange so that teachers and administrators can notice them right away, know why they're in the classroom. And essentially what it is based all on assessment data. A teacher will give an assessment, and based on whatever assessment data they have, formative typically, they will say to themselves, okay, we're working on this skill. These 20 kids, they've got it. They're ready to go, and they can continue, they can work on these learning exercises that are going to hone that skill a little bit. These 5 kids are really struggling on that skill. So on the day that I'm going to focus more on that skill as a teacher, I'm going to keep those 5 students in the room, and those 20 students who have mastered that part already are in a flex time. So they are able to access through Schoology lessons, activities that the teacher has kept on Schoology, so that they can continue their learning, because like Ramona said, they've mastered that faster. And so it's a way to really differentiate the instruction. You can extend for those students who are really excelling, and you can pull back and really drill down with those students who are in the classroom. It's like the flipped classroom. We have several of our math teachers do the flipped classroom, where students watch videos where they learn the concept at home, and then class time is more for asking for help, really getting nitty gritty with like, I don't understand this problem, let's really go through it and work on it and kind of hone that skill. So that's the combination. There will be days where everybody will be in the classroom. When I, as a teacher, am introducing a new unit, or if I'm doing a group activity, I have to have all of my kids there. But in those times where I'm really working on skill development, I have the ability as a teacher to work very, very specifically with the group of students who need it, while those other students are free to excel at their own pace.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you already know the parameters that you're going to use to assess the pilot to know if it will continue on and expand?
So we haven't put any kind of formal criteria for assessment in place yet, because we're working to get ourselves up and running. And then what we plan to do is talk to other people who have implemented this, talk to Heather Staker, talk to Huntley High School, to really start to get an idea of how do we measure that this is working. A lot of the data is going to be anecdotal at first. Yes. It really is. So I'm going to be able to say, Kathleen Harsey and Mark Ori, who teach co-taught sophomore English, I'm going to need to have them give us some anecdotal data about a particular profile of student that they might have in that class, and how the progression was different, how the investment of students was different, the buy-in of students was different. So it's going to be a lot of anecdotal first, and I think once we get going, then Bridget and I will be able to kind of wrap our heads around what does that success criteria look like, so we can make some good decisions at the end.
Depending on the section, you should be able to pre and post some of that.
Oh, certainly, yes. And in theory, their test scores, they took a practice PSAT at 10th grade, and they took a practice SAT at 11th grade. So in theory, yes, we could use that particular data. The part that always worries me about that, and you know this, is that there's so much else that goes into that data, right? To be able to isolate and say this is just blended learning. Right. But yes, of course, we can do that.
Well, because you're talking about skill development. So if you're really talking about skill development, you can test a skill, right?
Yes.
So yes, I know. Remember you're talking to, like, I want it to work so bad, right? Like, this is perfect for our kids. This is what our kids need. Yes. This is what working in the real world is all about, right?
Right.
And what Google-y companies want is the soft skills. So where are the and that's the hardest part to measure, right?
Yes.
But that's the part we need to know to make sure that it's working.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, my other question is, we're talking about 8 sections, so are we talking about 200 to 250 kids? Like, how many kids are affected here? Ish.
So the way that we structured it, we did it so that there would be one blended class per period. so that, because if I would have said to Dave Mannon, hey, guess what, there's going to be 5 periods blended on 5th period, he would have killed me. So we stuck to 1 period of blended each day. The only difference with that was 2nd period, because when the teachers applied for blended, it just so happened that 8 of them really wanted to do it, and Bridget and I couldn't bring ourselves to say no to that 8th person. So 2nd period, we have 2 classes going, but the rest, there's only 1. So at maximum in a period, you're talking about 20 kids, maybe,
20
that
to
would
30.
be 20 to 30 that would be out of the room. Certain teachers also have certain specifications. So for example, Bridget Wilmot's students are not allowed to go to the atrium. She wants them somewhere where she could go and find them. She wants them in the library. So we've worked a little bit to make sure that we have the ability to make sure that security is on a rotation where they can see the kids, and we can manage for our student affairs office and our deans the craziness that could ensue. But we're super excited.
I'd love to have you come back in a couple of months and just give us an update.
Sure,
as to
absolutely.
how it's going.
Yeah, I'd be
Yes.
happy to.
If anyone
Absolutely.
else is interested.
So when they're out of the classroom, they don't have to work on that content.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. They don't. So it's
like an independent study.
Right.
Or like a self-paced.
Yeah, like in a college, they have that time, they have that time back to themselves, and they have to, they have to manage that time and figure out how that's going to work for them. But yeah, they could be doing, they could be working on another assignment. Bridget Wilmot actually did an in-class pilot of this last year, where she did blended, but her kids weren't allowed to leave, so they could just be in there. So she invited me to observe one day, and I went in, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, what are these kids that don't have to be in the front of the room with Bridget going to be doing? And I sat in the back of the room so I could see their Chromebook screens, right? Are they watching Netflix? What are they doing? Huntley High School would say it wouldn't matter if they were watching Netflix. They can watch Netflix if they want to. They can decide. At Huntley, they have an open campus, so they're not even there. And what I noticed was so cool, Bridget gave the students halfway through class a break where they were allowed to look at their phones. Like, it was just like, she knows that the kids are dying because their phones are away, so she gave them a break. There were 2 students in the entire classroom who pulled those phones out. They didn't touch them. There was 1 student in that class that got on like a game on her Chromebook literally for 5 minutes and then turned it off and went right back to work. So what I noticed is when they did have that leeway, some of them didn't even use it, and some of them just needed that like little burst of like, I need to do this thing right now, and then they were gone, and they were still working on what they were supposed to be working on, even when they didn't need to be.
Because if you give them meaningful work,
Yes.
they will do it.
Yes.
If you give them worksheets and garbage,
Yes, they will be on Netflix.
goof off.
Yes, yes.
Sorry.
Just like we would, right, Ramona?
I'll get off my soapbox. All right.
Okay. Any questions about
Sorry.
blended learning?
Thank you. It's interesting.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Course fees, Kevin.
All right, I know. This is Kevin's way of saying, get on. Here we go. Course fees. So I gave you in board book a sheet that highlights the proposed course fee changes for this year. There are 27 proposed increases, ranging from $1 because of the cost of Carnegie books going up a little bit in our math classes, to $25, which I know is high, but that's in a lifeguard training class, and the masks that they need to use have gone up in price, so they need to be able to account for that. There are also 18 proposed decreases to fees. So we have reasons anywhere from reduction in cost to certain materials, like in the world language classes, to our wellness class. Our group fitness class is no longer purchasing heart monitors for everyone because some of our transition students have been washing them so that we can reuse them and save us some money there. Any fee that is not listed on this sheet is unchanged and would stay the same for the following year. So these are the only adjustments that we would be making fee-wise if the Board of Education approves those changes.
Okay, this was a first read. I did not receive any questions on this. When do you need this approved by?
The curriculum guide needs to go live by October 18th, which is our first registration appointment. So I would need before that meeting, so maybe at the October 8th.
Mary Ann, when's our October business meeting? Is October 8th, I believe?
Yes.
And so what I would recommend to the board, to keep with our 2 times to review, we'll put this on the consent agenda unless I receive any other questions. Is that fair? Since there's two board members not here tonight?
Yes.
Okay, Kylie, next one. Curriculum guide changes.
So the next one is the curriculum guide changes. Ramona and Laura have seen these because these came up last year, but we wanted to wait until Dr. Freitas was seated so that we could get his input and stamp of approval as well. So we are proposing 4 new courses to the curriculum guide. There was a question that was submitted about what that impact has on our FTE and how do we find staff that are going to teach these courses. Under the impact section of each of those courses, I tried to articulate that it sounds terrible, but when we propose new courses, a lot of times our courses eat each other up. So we're proposing an advanced graphic arts class in applied arts. We only have so many students who have so much room in their schedule. So students taking advanced graphic arts might pull from students who are taking foods, or it might pull from students who are taking game design and animation. So that's kind of how that shift takes place. For example, one of the courses that we proposed was speech. A speech communications class. That's going to pull from our creative writing, from our debate. So it just ends up being that and the teachers know this when they submit, it kind of ends up, one thing eats another. And so we might have next year, if speech communications is something that a lot of students are like, yeah, I need to know how to do that, we might see our numbers in debate drop. But we don't see adding these new courses. We don't see a correlation between adding these and having to add new FTE to cover them. Another question you'll see in the proposed new courses, and I knew that this could be a little confusing, the college algebra STEM math question. So our current college algebra, right now, students sitting in college algebra, they are working on the curriculum through Triton to be able to get through that, get over the hump of that transitional math. Working with, and Lindsay Minot has worked a great deal with Triton in the state of Illinois to really make sure that we are meeting our requirements under the PWR Act for transitional math. With that now happening and that going into place and being a mandate as of last summer, we are now moving our current college algebra curriculum to the course entitled STEM Math. That is the course moving forward, so starting next year, that will help the students be placed in a credit-bearing math course at a community college. So that is the transitional math course, STEM Math. Since we had to go that route and we had to work within the boundaries of the state and that had to become STEM Math, we as a school wanted to bring back our old college algebra curriculum that we taught before we had to worry about what the state and Triton were doing. Because that curriculum was designed not for students who were in danger of placing into a Dev Ed math class, but for students who wanted a 4th year of math because they were going to go on to college, but they didn't want to take AP Calc BC or AP Stats. So we're bringing back the content of that course that we used and we felt was successful for those kind of tweener students, I guess you could call them. So now that we've shifted the current math class to STEM Math, we can bring back college algebra the way we knew it to be in the past. And Lindsay and I were talking today about this again, and she is currently working with Triton to figure out how we can make this new college algebra, our old curriculum that we're bringing back, a dual credit option as well. If we can get that going with Triton College, all of our, and I hope I'm saying this right, Lindsay, I know you're watching at home, all of our 4th year math classes would bear a dual credit opportunity. So any student who went into a math class, if we can get this through, and I believe that she can do it. If anybody can, she can. That will then mean that if you're a senior taking math at RB, you're getting college credit for it, regardless of what class you're taking. And that's really important for us. So that's kind of, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, I wanted to make sure that I explained it
so
the right way.
So does the STEM math class
yes.
count for that transition class at Triton?
It places the student into a credit-bearing course at Triton, yes. So it removes them from needing to take a Dev Ed class for which they wouldn't get credit.
Right.
Just to kind of be up to par, yes.
So, I mean, that's a class that's not college credit, but it would save a student from having to take a class. Yes. So it is, in a way, college credit, because if they didn't take it, then they would have to be taking that Dev Ed class when they got to Triton.
I hope counselors or advisors are helping students realize that.
Yes, yes.
Because I think there are kids who don't know that.
Absolutely. And one of the things that Beth and I have talked about recently is there are some things like this, and I'm going to touch on the internships in a minute, that I'm going to work like a cheat sheet out for the counselors because they have a lot that they have to remember. And, this student, and I'm switching gears, and now it's sophomores and juniors, so that they have kind of the new things that we want to make sure that they highlight because they're our best resource in that face-to-face contact
And you
with
can
students.
see how a senior might not be motivated to take a fourth year of math if
Yeah,
they don't
absolutely.
have to.
Yes.
And then they get to try it in another school and they're like,
Wait, I have to
I
take
wish I
math
would've known.
again? Yes, exactly.
So I want to make sure I understand, on the college math.
Yes.
That is a current course.
Currently.
So you're not coming with a new course called college math. You're looking to repurpose current college math so it could be dual credit.
college algebra.
College
I'm sorry.
algebra.
Right, yeah.
College algebra.
Sort
But you're
of.
repurposing it,
Yeah.
sort of.
Sort of.
Okay.
Because what we're teaching right now, students sitting in college algebra right now, if we fast forwarded a year, we would call that class STEM math.
Okay.
So we are repurposing the curriculum that we used to teach as college algebra. So it is bringing back another math class. There will be another math option.
Okay, so we're not.
As a result. That's why these are one on the proposed additions and one on the proposed changes.
Okay, so I guess
why it's
that's,
kind of weird.
so my question, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So on these new courses, what type of enrollment are you looking for to gauge success? And I guess kind of part and parcel, this is a question I got to later in the day today, I'm sorry, is we obviously have classes in the curriculum guide that don't run on a yearly basis. So how do we, and I hear what you're saying about kind of eating their own a little bit.
Sure.
But how do we make a determination of what the right head count is to run a class, and how do we encourage people to sign up for classes?
There's a board policy that we put in place about 8 years ago that in order for a course to run, they had to have over a minimum of 20 students. Anything below 20 students needed board approval. So what we usually bring to the board in March is after we do the course selection process, we'll identify courses that are either AP courses, intervention courses for graduation or the additional kids that may need additional interventions, or in this case, like a fourth year of math. And we bring those courses to the board and say we have 17 students signed up, and then we give you a rationale why we would think it's important for the board to approve. And then if the board wants to approve, they approve that, for that course to run under 20.
Okay, so I guess my question might be more of a chicken and egg question, right?
Okay.
So how does a student know to enroll in a course that hasn't run in a couple of years, right? If we know there's this unattainable 20, they are enrolling
We
in the
encourage
fall.
students to, when they pick their classes, to pick the classes where their interests lie and what they want to pursue. We do see some fluctuation in classes to where 1 year will run and 1 year it won't run. I think it was an AP music class that was like every other year, and it was also like calculus BC. That was, for a while there was, I thought my first year or two as superintendent, I thought we had some fluctuation in one of our math courses.
No, it was Spanish literature that is now taken off, but for a while, some years we would run in. Some
Like
years
every
we
other
wouldn't.
year.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd like to see just over the last, whatever's the right time frame, 3 years, 4 years, which of these classes really are not running? And I think that's kind of
4 years of consistency. Beth could be able to put together that report. That wouldn't happen until springtime. Once we see, how many kids pick classes, because we'll get, maybe.
Do you pick classes now for next year? You don't wait till spring?
Yeah, our first registration
Right,
appointment
but
is
our freshmen
October
aren't done
18th.
picking until January.
Right.
So it's from like October through like January.
Right, so it's a long,
It's a long
guess,
process.
no, and I see what you're saying. I just think, again, back to my chicken and egg thought, is that if you, the counselors encourage people, yes, to pursue their interests, but if I know music, whatever the music class was, hasn't run last year or the year before, I'm going to sit there and go, maybe I don't want to sign up for a music class next year.
Sure.
The odds are it's going to mess up my schedule now. If I have to fill something else in afterwards, it's going to mess everything else up. So I guess just in the interest of transparency as they go through this process, as the students and their families go through this process, what are we really putting in the curriculum guide and what are we supporting in the curriculum guide? I'm trying to
So
get to.
we do always, the counselors are really, because so many of the counselors have been here for so long, and Beth has been here 16, 17 years, so they do know, like, we could rattle off to you what classes we struggle to run, right? Creative writing, debate, AP music theory, we can rattle those off to you easily. The student, for that reason, the students always have a second choice option that because the counselors do have that conversation with kids, because they know what has run and what hasn't run typically. So they're able to say to a student who says, I really want to be in AP Music Theory, like my whole life depends on being in AP Music Theory. A counselor is going to say to them, that class hasn't run since 2007. Something to that effect, so that they have that base of knowledge. But we can certainly, I can work with Beth to certainly take a look at that. And we also do try to, through this process, we have in the past deleted some courses out of the curriculum guide. For example, there was journalism was listed as a course, and we couldn't remember, there was no one in the room who could remember when that course had ever run. So we brought that to the Board of Education because we wanted to pull it out, so that we aren't saying to kids and families, hey, here are all these courses
Right, and
you
that's
can
my
take.
concern.
Ooh, wait, not those. We try to stay on top of that, but we can certainly look at the report too.
Is there a minimum we use with the instructional coaches? If it's 3 years or 5 years that we recommend to pull it off the curriculum guide?
There hasn't been like a hard and fast rule in the past since I got here, no. I mean, we could certainly talk about that, but there hasn't been like there hasn't been any kind of formal language in place. There was one other question about one of the course additions, the Latin American History course, which is super exciting for us. This course was actually proposed by one of our special education teachers who has a degree also in history, Armando Venegas. So this is a course that we would consider, if we're going to run this course, if this is something that takes off, that is something we would want to tap Armando for, because we see that as a passion project, something that he brought forth. As you can see by the length of the proposal, there's a lot of research that went into it, right? So Armando is really, really conscious. This isn't a flippant idea. This is something that he's been considering for a long time. And then all of our course changes that are proposed there are 6 of them. They're really prerequisite changes. The music ones, we're pulling out a prerequisite, saying that anybody can join the jazz band and the orchestra. There doesn't need to be a prerequisite for that. The science courses are changing the instructional timeline a little bit, and so we want to be able to change that in the guide. And then some changes to the prerequisites in Clarion, because what we were noticing was happening in Clarion. It was one of those classes that we wanted to really make sure that we ran, and so it was like the Statue of Liberty, like bring me you're tired, you're hungry, people who hate writing, don't care about the news, everyone. And then we started to realize, wait a minute, we should probably be a little bit more particular about, this just shouldn't be like anyone who wants to just show up and hang out on a computer all day, right? We wanted people who really wanted to contribute to the school newspaper, because it is, it is a very good publication. So those changes were all pretty minor.
How many periods a day does it run now? Because it's saying it does run 2.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it does run 2 periods now, 2 full sections. I believe the first year that Mark was hired, which is the first year I was here, it was 1 period, and then since then it's been 2 every year.
Kylie, I know there weren't any questions submitted, but I think it's important to recognize the new class of summer internship.
Yes. So the summer internship course is ready to go on the books, and so I didn't put that on the sheet because it involves a lot of language. Essentially, in summary, students are now going to have an opportunity as they are approaching their junior or approaching their senior year to earn 0.5 credits of either applied arts elective credit or general elective credit through a summer internship. The information on that document that you have details, this would go directly in the curriculum guide, exactly how it looks here, and details the different areas that students can focus on, and what courses we have in the building that align to those particular fields, as well as an explanation of how students would get that internship credit. This is something that the Career and Internship Committee has really spent a lot of time looking at. How can we approach this and make this work for students? We're super excited about it. What I didn't include for you is the work that I've done with and I can certainly provide it to anyone who's interested. The application paperwork, the agreement that students will have to have signed by the internship supervisor and parents, a sample letter that students could send to a business soliciting, hey, I want to come intern for you. Here's the language, kiddos. You can put it right out there. So we're very excited for that, and we would like to start offering that in the curriculum guide for this coming summer. I have a personal goal. Dr. Freitas and I just worked through my goals, and I have a personal goal of getting 10 kids in that internship this summer, so I can go to 10 different sites all summer long. I'm very excited, and we'll see. I'll let you know if it happens.
Can I just ask you, how do students find out about this? Because if they want to do a summer internship, they can't get a summer internship in like April.
Right.
Right? Like they're going to
Yes.
have to start now,
Yes.
start looking for that.
Yes. So as soon as the board says yes, I want to be able to do e-blasts to families, to students. I want to be able to get it in the hands of maybe our English department because they see every kid every day. I want to put it in our newsletter. I want to be able to tweet it out. I want to be able to just, as soon as you guys say we're go, I'm going. And if we get 100 kids, I don't know what we're going to do, but that's a good problem to have.
That's a good problem to have.
You probably should think of a max, right? Because
You
you'll
probably
have
should.
12-month administrators will probably be having to do some
Yes.
site visits.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
at some point, it's
Yeah,
gonna be
that's a good idea.
The
Yep.
rationale of like,
Yep.
a cap.
Yes.
I have a question before we move on.
Oh, sure.
Okay. But while you're doing interns, I want to go back to the math question. So when you're done with the interns, you're good there?
I think we're good.
So Kylie, going back to the math class, that will suffice or will meet the requirement for the, it's kind of like the prerequisite to get college credit for a math class at Triton. Triton gives, and most colleges give, a placement test, but it's after the student graduates over the summer. And then they're there freshman year and they're taking classes that don't count towards their degree.
Paying tuition.
And paying tuition. Is there any way that we can work with Triton where those students could take that the summer after their junior year, and then then they would be like, no, I want to do that my senior year?
The placement test, I mean, we've been working on this with the DVR cooperative and with Triton for a long time.
Okay.
They could use their placement test score or the math portion of their ACT or SAT.
We use
So we could use your junior year scores to see if
they could like flag you based
Correct.
on what score you got, and the counselor can say, because you scored X, Y, or Z, here's an option for you.
Correct.
That's a good point.
Because I know as a parent, your kid has a B in class, nothing's more frustrating than you're paying for 3 classes that don't count towards their degree.
Especially when you're like, wait, they had a B. I thought
Yeah,
were
they had
good.
decent grades. What do you mean? This
One of the
semester's
things
a
we've been
bust.
going back and
Yeah.
forth on for a long time, and Kristen and Kylie can speak to this a little bit. I try to echo their message at our DVR cooperative is the cut scores. So you would, for a long time, ACT would say a 21 in math or a 22 in math. I'm not sure if this is the accurate number, but they would say that's college ready or considered to be college ready. But then in order to take a class for credit at Triton, it was like 23 or 24.
Yeah.
So it was like 2 points higher than what ACT was saying. So there was a lot of work done to try to get it to be equivalent to what the same standards that ACT and the College Board were saying. So when students pass those tests, they wouldn't have to take the developmental ed course or the developmental math course at Triton.
But now we're using SAT, and so assuming there's an equivalent with the SAT?
Right.
Okay. I think if we could close that gap, it'd be a huge service to our families.
Right. This is also becoming law, like between the Illinois Community College Board, I think it's the ICCB, and state legislators. I mean, they're working on something so that there are some. We're working on actually, Kristen and I, on like a partnership agreement with our math courses and some of our dual credit courses, so that kids can get dual credit, what the fees will be, and some things like that. So this is all a big process.
Thank you.
E-learning is next, yes?
Kylie, you're up one last time.
Here we go. First thing on e-learning, Gina, thank you for catching my 11 o'clock, 11:59. Actually, I corrected that. It is 11:59 p.m. when students submit. So the e-learning plan comes from the reinstatement of the 5-hour school day that Pritzker signed into law. And with the reinstatement of that 5-hour school day, there is an allowance made for e-learning because the pilot program for e-learning in lieu of the 5 emergency days for snow, for weather, for emergency, worked out so well over the pilot years. It worked very well for us last year as well. So we have already done e-learning. So the one thing that I want to make sure I articulate to you is that everything in this plan that I am giving to you right now, more or less, we have already done. We have already checked all of these boxes, and our plan, again, thanks to Bridget Wilmot, was really solid, and we were able to execute e-learning days very well for our first 2 go-rounds. However, with the reinstatement of the 5-hour instructional day, there is some guidance now in the law that school districts have to have an approved e-learning plan approved by the intermediate service center that services them. So for us, that would be West 40. So when I first got here, Dr. Skinkus told me that getting me to serve on the West 40 board would be beneficial, and you all can probably guess that I hate saying that he was right, but in this small, very, very small case, he was, because with Mark Klasner being the director of West 40, I was able to shoot him an email that said, hey, Mark, can you give us some insight into how the ROEs are going to be looking at the e-learning plans? And like within a couple hours, absolutely, Kylie, here you go. So I was able to get a glimpse at the draft that the state of Illinois was going to use for how to evaluate these plans to check it against our plan. So the way that I put all of this together is truly sat with Mark's list and crossed it off. Okay, this is how we do this. And again, it was putting information that we already had for processes that we did last year on our e-learning days into a plan now that will be submitted to our West 40 ROE so that they can kind of give us the seal of approval. Of course, there is not information yet on when those submissions will take place or what that final tool is going to look like, but we were able to comply with having the public hearing, putting out the notice to all of our stakeholders, and then coming to the Board of Education and asking the Board of Education to adopt this plan for e-learning. Again, very similar to what we used last year. The one thing that we tweaked a little bit is there's a big portion of the law that speaks to equitable access to technology for students. And so we, the way the law reads, it talks about providing paper copies for students if they need it, adjusting deadlines for students who maybe I do have Wi-Fi, but there was a huge snowstorm and it got knocked out and I can't submit. So there's allowances in here for all of that. And we are looking to repurpose some of our Title I money to purchase Wi-Fi devices. So like a hotspot for some of our students who don't have internet access. And one thing that I have been saying, since looking into this is Wi-Fi access is not necessarily just an e-learning issue, it's an equity issue in general across the board. So this plan sort of helped us to realize how we could approach meeting that need for our students who might have that need, because we do want to give all of our students an equitable playing field while they're here at RB. So this plan, again, is simply we're checking a box, so to speak, because under the law now the Board of Education has to kind of stamp the seal of approval on our e-learning plan.
So we gave it to the board tonight as the first read. We did not receive any questions. Obviously, we did some of that last year. And so at the October 8th meeting, we will have a formal public hearing should anybody in the community want to come out, ask questions, or provide visitors' comments during the e-learning hearing, and hopefully the board will approve our e-learning plan, and then we have it in place in the event we need to use it this year.
Do we have anything on the web about that if we're having a public hearing? Do we have?
Yes, we publish it in the newspaper, we do it on the web.
And we sent, I had an email blast go to all families, students, and staff, because that's part of the law as well, how we communicate that out.
So you're using some of the Bright Bites data to inform the part, because there is a section of Bright Bites about access.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And we're going to, once we get this approved, we'll have an application process for people to be able to apply for that need-based support on devices that we use the title money for.
Also interested in that.
Is there any other questions for Kylie? Kylie, thank you very much.
Nice job.
You did a great
Thank
job.
you. A lot of
Thank you.
information.
Moving quickly, Dr. Skinner.
Not happy about the comment that you told yourself. But we'll
Should I
talk
call
about
you?
that.
Should I call in sick tomorrow?
We'll talk about that tomorrow. Thank you, Kylie.
Thank you. Matters for closed session?
Personnel, student discipline, purchase, sale, lease of real property, probable imminent or pending litigation, collective negotiations, and school safety.
Visitor statements? No? Seeing as there are none, we'll move on. Any requested discussion items?
Laura had one.
Oh, yes, Laura did have one. Okay, the March for Climate Change?
Yes. So this discussion is for us as board members. It's about empowering our administration to say no when it's appropriate. Because I think, our administration bends over backwards for our students to take every advantage. Even when there was the Cubs rally, administration, it was a huge hit in our attendance, but it's once in 120 years. And they made every, event.
108.
When we had the student who, was unfortunately hit by the car and died, there was a march to the site. Administration made the march and walk with them safely and appropriately. We had that conversation a day before that march, and none of us knew about it. It had not been planned. It had not been brought up to the administration the day before the march. We saw the email in the morning saying anybody who left be considered a cut. And I supported that because nobody had come and asked and said, we really support this. We're involved in environmental issues. And I'm not opposed to that. Our family makes choices to be environmentally conscientious and part of a restoration group for 20 years. But then I saw in the Clarion that, at the last minute we accommodated some students. The article in the Clarion. That some students marched out, they went to the football field, and this was that. We talk about career readiness. You can't just walk out on your job and not tell your boss this is something that's meaningful to me, or you can't come the day of and say, well, I'm going to do this. I really feel like on that day, our administration would have been in the appropriate place to say, well, I'm sorry, not this time. You didn't have a good plan. We want to support you, but this is how we go about doing it. But sometimes when our administration says no, the newspaper writes about it, they're horrible, they don't want to support students. But that's not the case. Our administration does a great job in supporting students. So as a board, I think it was appropriate that we have that conversation to say, no, you can say no sometimes, and we'll support you to say no. If nobody approached you and made a plan to do this, we don't have to say yes for every whim without a good plan. And I don't know what other board members think.
I think we should get a little background from Hector. As we didn't know that this was going to be a topic of discussion tonight, so what you have from your knowledge of the situation. I know there were a small group of students. You and I had talked about it the night before, and you had shared some thoughts with me that it would have been treated differently if they would have went through the proper channels. But you want to provide a little background, you can.
Yeah, sure. So we were, a student sent an email to me, and we addressed it in the morning, and I talked about him wanting to participate in the global climate change, and he shared it with other classmates. He had a few responses. So, but the minute we found out, we brought the student in. What's going on? What's the purpose? Why are you doing this? Please talk to us about it. And the young man, he knew his points. We want to walk in together. We care about the environment. But it was really last minute. I want to be involved as a principal. I want to empower our young men and women. However, we were not involved, and that's one of the reasons why I had to take, a firm stance, and I addressed the situation, with the cut. As far as the actual event, at about 12:30, maybe 20 students, went to the main entrance and said, we want to walk out, because we believe in this global climate change, So right away, we started acting. I'm like, can we find a safe space for you all? And the students were agreed, Do you mind if we go to the football field, So we went to the football field. The students hung around. They spoke, about the issue, among each other. 15 minutes later, they all came back peacefully in and reported to class. There was no disciplinary issue, no disciplinary referral address, not a suspension, in-school suspension, or nothing like that. I did tell them about the consequences academically that they could face, and they powerfully chose to participate in it. So it was a smooth day. Only a few students really participated in this. However, I am open for future extended learning opportunities. It just has to go through the right and proper channels.
And can we make sure that we communicate those through SA and through your principal's forum?
Yes. Yep.
And not that we want to encourage walkouts or protests, but at the same time, should they choose, there should be some protocol they go through with you, and they understand that there will be ramifications, and which would be the attendance issue, and that being marked as a cut.
So were those 20 students marked as a cut?
Yes.
Okay. And, as a board, I think I want to support our administration and say, yes, it's a cut. You said it would be, and not because you're not supportive of the issue, but because we just didn't have a good plan for it.
That's fair to say, yes.
Okay.
There's a process,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And to your point of you wouldn't do this, right? Because we're training them to go to
Right.
work or to be productive adults, right? And so in their adult life, they wouldn't just do it.
But to Kevin's point, students need to know ahead of time what the process is so that they can follow it. They can't follow it if they don't know what it is, right? So we just have to communicate that out to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if, I agree, I support the administration wholeheartedly, and I'm fine with it being a cut for them, but kids do need to know ahead of time, if we're going to walk out for this globe, whatever the case may be, just follow the proper steps and
I think we did communicate that at 8 o'clock to parents about the 12:30. I mean, a kid sent it to the principal less than 24 hours before. And again, it's not something we want to necessarily encourage, but put some parameters in place so that there is a way for students to peacefully protest or express their concerns or interest, but also understand that there are consequences. If you decided to attend a protest and miss work that day, you would either take a sick day or be charged or lose pay that day.
Right.
So, those are some ramifications of same thing at the high school.
Yeah.
So,
So
and I
my
think-
point of bringing that up was just to support administration to make a hard decision, because the newspapers are not always fair that way.
And again, I think the Clarion's a student perspective, which is good, and I would, it's one perspective.
Yeah.
So I guess I have a couple thoughts. I think that the board policies in place are very supportive towards the students who took action on Friday, right? I think it's very clear you're not disrupting the education environment, you're not causing harm to some other human. I'm paraphrasing heavily here. I'm not sure the policies speak to going through a process. Part of the art of protest is not to tell people above you that you're going to protest. So I think that's, some of it is a balancing act in terms of what the students may be trying to change. I agree it was a very last-minute approach, it appears in this case, but certainly the March for Climate Change had been known about for months and months. So the date itself wasn't new. There was just a lot of, I think, media interest in the movement as last week kind of headed towards the UN conference. Absolutely support the administration in terms of how it was handled. I think there was some good communication on it. I think that there was follow-up makes perfect sense. There was a cause and effect to Kevin's point. But I also think we, as we are looking for these kids to be active in their society, there's different ways to handle protests that may have been in place from when we were kids or 40 years ago were kids. And I think we just need to be somewhat flexible as we go forward in knowing how we respond to protests today may be different than how we would have responded 10 years ago. Social media has a different aspect to it. I think the causes are much more real seeming in many ways to kids. They have a different level of political engagement than certainly was the case when I was in high school. So I'm trying to recognize that and balance it out with, I think the point is a solid one. They are here to go to school, right? They are here to spend their time in school. but also being mindful of, you know, if we need to look at our policies at some point, you know, have that discussion.
Okay. Consideration of items for future meetings? Any? Deanna?
Nope.
To my right. Were we going to consider talking about communication from our workshop, adding that to a future agenda item?
I have it down as a superintendent report for the October cow, just to provide a communication audit.
Audit, okay,
Different venues we're using.
okay.
Yeah, and we're gonna wait till, I mean, we'll get our report back too, right? For
Right.
the, like, the notes.
Right, I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that
Yes.
it was on the horizon somewhere.
Okay, I need a motion for closed session, please.
So moved.
Got to read
You
the.
have to
gotta read it.
that. Can you see that?
Was it closed out? Resolved that the Board of Education Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois enters closed session for the purposes of considering appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body. Student discipline, purchase, sale, or lease of real property, probable, imminent, or pending litigation, collective negotiation, and school safety.
Second.
Second by Gina
Just got
Sierra.
the glasses.
Perfect.
They did a good job.
Perfect test. Mary Ann, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 These are actually the best ones.
Can I do this again?